We're back with episode 9 of The Step Through, a weekly show about the WNBA, hosted by myself, Sabreena Merchant, and Evin Gualberto. Evin, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing well, better than some who are upset about their 2K ratings, but how are you?
I love a good WNBA beef, so I'm here for all conversations about 2K ratings. My one contribution to this discourse, given that I don't play NBA 2K, is that if Kevin Durant is a 96, then Stewie should also be a 96. That's where I'm going to put it. Or maybe even higher than 96, honestly.
It's true. I have no disagreements with that at all. Both members of Team Achilles comeback.
Yeah.
There's got to be a
Kelsey
better
Plum
name.
Not a 96 though.
No, that's true. But
was Kelsey Plum the MVP of the 3-on-3 tournament? Was there an MVP of the 3-on-3 tournament?
I don't believe there was. See, I was listening to Tea with A and Phee. Free plug. Mm-hmm. We're fans. I was listening to it, and I feel like they would have mentioned it. So
gotcha. Yeah. Well, I was going to say then they all have that in common, having been MVPs of their Olympic basketball tournaments on Achilles' comeback, which is pretty nuts. I love that we do free plugs for shows that are much bigger than ours and don't need the advertisements.
That's our brand.
Anyway, the WNBA is back this week. Every team has played 2 regular season games in the second half of the season as of us recording this. And I just want to start off by, spitballing about some things that we liked, from the last week. I'm going to go a little off script for the first one. I made a mention of the WNBA Commissioner's Cup trophy last week and how I had concerns. And it was great. That was a really pretty trophy. The rose gold is a nice color. Well done, WNBA. Nice trophy presentation. Sue Bird obviously steals the show with her speech afterwards about the money. Just great stuff all around in the Commissioner's Cup. Naturally would have preferred a more competitive game, but I think that was a very, very solid debut for this event. And it was cool to see just a really nice crowd in Phoenix, and 2 teams that definitely took the game seriously, even if it didn't work out in Connecticut's favor.
Right. I mean, if you only watched the first half, you would have thought this was maybe shaping up to be the best game of the year. I mean, that's probably not true because there are a lot of.
We've covered a lot of good games on this show.
Really great games, but yeah, we did so much work prepping for the Commissioner's Cup that it's crazy that it's just over and that it was kind of a dud. I continue to be proven wrong on this show. Just expecting a Jonquel statement game, did not get it. Expected Stewie to just run out of gas. She did not.
I mean, she didn't have to play the fourth quarter, so that kind of helps.
It's true. So, I'll do little diagrams and stuff, but don't listen to me, is my point.
Hey, a lot of the actions we talked about showed up right away in that game. So I think we did a very solid job previewing it. And I also just love the idea that Noelle Quinn might have told Sue Bird and Jewell and Stewie, hey, I'm going to put you on such and such minutes restrictions. And they were just like, all right, we'll just play that much in the first 3 quarters. That's what's going to happen.
That I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, to be honest. Just there's a hard cap on their limits and they're just like, oh, we're going to hit it. Okay, we're good.
We're good. Golden age of Breanna Stewart. I'm consistently delighted by her. When she got the MVP for the Commissioner's Cup, it seemed like she had forgotten one of the awards that Kathy Engelbert was listing off as she was presenting her the trophy. She said, Russian League MVP, EuroLeague Final Four, and she sort of raises her eyebrows oh yeah, I did that too.
I mean, all she does is win, really. Yeah. Congrats to her on the baby, which is, oh man. If you asked me the real reason why, well, I don't know why Sue took those games off, but the real reason Stewie took those games off is because of sleep deprivation, not jet lag, but baby induced sleep deprivation.
Yeah, because Sue was in New York for that game against the Liberty, even though she didn't play. I imagine Stewie's just back at home, taking care of little Ruby, not Ruby Tokyo, because that middle name was vetoed by her wife. Good call, I'm going to say, to veto the name Ruby Tokyo. It's too bad that she wasn't born immediately after the last Olympics, because Ruby Rio has a nice ring to it.
Yeah. Shame on them, I guess.
Anyway, this is nominally about the WNBA, and potentially we should talk about games at some point. But first thing stood out to me this week is one Allie Quigley, who headed into the break just on a perfect high note after winning the 3-point shootout, not in dominating fashion because there were like serious competitors in Jonquel Jones and Sammy Wickham too, put up quite the fight in the first round, but like she just incredible performance in that shootout, right? Like watching Allie Quigley shoot just never gets old. And then she comes back and she's the third leading scorer in the WNBA over this past week in these first 3 games, which is very impressive when you consider that she comes off the bench and the top 2 leading scorers were Jewell Loyd and Tina Charles. So it's not like she's going to get on top of those people. But watching Allie Quigley, I am consistently mesmerized by how often defenses either lose sight of her in transition or go under on screens. Like, how is this not the number 1 talking point in your scouting report? Like, I get that Allie's got great footwork and, you know, she can kind of lose you in the half court. How are you not getting a body on her in transition? I was shocked watching the Storm Sky game on Sunday and just the number of times they got the ball to Allie and it was like, oh, where is the defender? Like, this is a guaranteed 3 points. Are you worried about fouling her and potentially getting 4 points? Like, is that the problem here? But Allie Quigley in great form as ever. Chicago, I'm not sure what to make of their team. I actually had a chance to talk to Stephanie Dolson yesterday, and she also was confused about what's happening with our offense. But I can tell you one thing, Allie Quigley, not the problem.
What is it? Was it 7 threes? 7 threes against the Wings and 5 against the Storm. That's oof.
It's a good week.
Putting up, yeah, a great 2 games.
Yeah.
So I actually, speaking of the offense, I was talking to Em, who gets an unreal amount of shout outs on the
Should we just bring her on as a third co-host at this point?
Probably. If she wants to do it, then why not? Listen to how many things I have to edit out based on just rattling nonsense off. The difference between the offense that is planned and orchestrated versus they're just calling their own stuff, it's not necessarily like night and day, because you still have great playmakers like, you know, Candice Parker and obviously Courtney Vandersloot, and secondary playmaker, like a growing secondary playmaker like Diamond DeShields. But they're not using Candice Parker as much as an offensive hub from either the low post or the high post as much as certainly I envisioned them doing. But like you said, the problem isn't Allie Quigley. Brings another ball handler, like nonstop motion. Obviously, you can't leave her, even though teams have, which is very weird. But yeah, so sky's the limit for Allie Quigley.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, one more thing I liked watching this week, we'll stick with that same Sky Storm theme, is Jewell Loyd as the number 1 option. I think it's kind of easy to forget, or maybe just for me, how talented she is and how capable she is of running an offense without Sue Bird and Breanna Stewart. Obviously, she had the opportunity to do that in the 2019 season when both of those players were out for the entire year, but she was just pouring it on over the last 2 games. And like, she had 35 points through the third quarter against New York. Granted, Seattle didn't win either of those 2 games. I'm not going to put that at the feet of Jewell Loyd because, I mean, they built up double-digit leads in both of those games through the third quarter, and it's not really her fault that the entire team ran out of gas because, hey, she just came back from the Olympics too. Steph Talbot came back from the Olympics. Ezzy McGregor came back from the Olympics. They're only riding a 10-player roster because Sue and Stewie are out. So there's just a lot of fatigue that you can't blame her on. But like, she's going to be a free agent this offseason. I don't know that she would consider leaving Seattle because of what a tremendous fit it is for her there and the opportunity that she has to win. But I get giddy thinking about the possibility of her running the show for her own team because she can do everything, right? Like, she was a menace defensively against Chicago, just like seemingly in every single passing lane during the first quarter. She can get to the cup whenever she wants to. She's got the jumper. Like, I'm not going to say that she's marginalized on Seattle because obviously they take very good advantage of all of the talent they have at their disposal. But it's cool to see that when there is more for her to do, she is capable of rising to the occasion. And like, Seattle might regret losing these games if it comes down to home court advantage or a first round bye, down the edge of the season. But like, it was just so much fun to watch Jewell Loyd be number one option Jewell Loyd, which I don't think she's been able to do in a very long time.
Right. Also, it's not as if maybe this is just when I think of number one options, I think of that player who's heliocentric and like, you need the ball in their hands like all the time for them to be effective. She's not. She doesn't need the ball all the time. She is. I tweeted this a bunch because I threaded both of the Storm games, not the Commissioner's Cup, obviously, but both of the Storm games. And what they like to do to get her going downhill is they'll have action going on one side, most often Chicago action, and they'll reverse the ball to her on the other side. And then more often than not, it was Mercedes Russell, but Mercedes will set a step-up screen. And now Jewell can go downhill against a tilted defense. And a lot of the time too, they're using her gravity or she's coming off of screens and other people are getting open because of it. And it's just, and it's crazy because it's the same thing on the other end. Her motor is just nonstop. And as you pointed out, she also won a gold medal, came off starting in the Olympics or, at some stretches was starting, but like, that's insane. My mind is blown.
Yeah. I do wonder if Seattle like unintentionally gets set in some bad habits because they can always be bailed out by Stewie. Like they were a little bit more mistake prone over these past two games than you often see the Storm. And I mean, you lose your MVP, like it's very hard to maintain the same level of performance and consistency. But I was a little intrigued to see that like they weren't as perfect as I expected them to be. Like I have a certain standard that you come to expect from the Storm just because of the level of success they've had over the past 3 years. And I mean, a lot of it comes down to their best players. And when those best players are missing, or two of the best three, I would say, there was some slippage that I was kind of surprised to see. But hey, yes. I don't really read much into it because again, like this is not going to be the case down the stretch.
Yeah. And I mean, again, shouting out things that are much bigger than this podcast. Slappin Glass. Subert appeared on Slappin Glass and she talked about how while other people might call it like hero ball or, hero plays and superstar plays, she refers to throwing Stewie the ball at the end of the shot clock as like bailout ball because she can bail you out of any situation because she's that talented. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing is that when Seattle is a fine-tuned machine at times when they are on it or when they have the gas to go. But when you start getting away from that more and more, you need somebody to just end possessions for you. And when the ball is in Breanna Stewart's hands, more often than not, it ends well for Seattle. And, we're seeing that's not there. And so like everybody is just a little more taxed and it's, I do want to shout out Katie Lou Samuelson for, we are enjoying the fact that she is playing really well after getting denied the chance to compete in 3-on-3, but her block from behind on Becca Allen, where she sort of pins it on the glass, where she doesn't pin it, but she swats it off the glass. Great stuff.
Yeah. Really rooting for Katie Lou over the next few games, just because, like you said, being denied the chance to play at the Olympics, like, God, that freaking sucks. But anyway, moving on to more happier things. Crystal Bradford, I've mentioned before on earlier episodes of the show that I have not paid as much attention to Atlanta as I would have liked, just because, lots of things going on in W. There's nothing specific I want to say about her game, just tremendous fun to watch her. She does all of these random things really well, and she's just always having an excellent time on the court. Like there are some players whose joy as they're playing just pops off, and Crystal Bradford is one of them. She also mean mugs quite a bit, and I love a player with a good deal of attitude. Frankly, Atlanta might have too much of it. And I mentioned last week that, one of the things I was looking forward to was watching Kennedy Carter come back. Got reporting from Spencer Nusbaum of the Next that probably won't happen for the remainder of the season. And it's too bad, but like, I kind of understand that there's just a lot of personality in that dream locker room. Like, you've got Kennedy Carter, you've got Courtney Williams, you've got Odyssey Sims, you've got Crystal Bradford, and then even Ari McDonald, like, not exactly a wallflower by any means. Like, she has, some spunk there. So as much as I would like to watch more Kennedy Carter, I get why they kind of have to restrain themselves to these 4 guards that are still in the rotation. And like, I was much more familiar with the games of Odyssey. Obviously, she used to be on the Sparks. Harry had that wonderful tournament run, and like, Courtney Williams is, what's not to love about Courtney Williams? She's been on the national stage for a very long time. But Crystal Bradford, like, she had this one play against the Sparks on Tuesday where she sort of muscles her way to the basket, like past Brittany Sykes, gets a layup, and then just like flexes on her way down, like right at the ref too, which is very dangerous because she has been called for a technical foul. But just like, again, someone who I had never heard of before the start of the season, even though she was drafted by the Sparks back in 2015, didn't really stick. So cool to see that she has made her way back into the league and like actually a legitimate role on the Atlanta Dream. She's got the best plus minus on their team, which still negative, but that's the breaks when you're the Atlanta Dream and you've lost 15 games. But hey, it's like, you do what you got to do. But I'm so interested by what she does. Like, she's a lefty, so she shoots a little funky. Like, she's got this funky little cadence as she's getting to the basket. She's so visible when you're watching Atlanta, and I love players who just are impossible not to pay attention to.
I really have nothing to say. I mean, you nailed it on the head with the Crystal Bradford stuff. I thought she got a little lost in the shuffle early in this season, but now she's found some stable minutes and is definitely a part of she was a part of the rotation, but she just, she would slide in and out. But now she's popping off, like you're saying. It's impossible to not see her on the court, which we've talked about on multiple episodes, has happened to some players that we don't expect that to happen to. You forget that they're there. Good for them, which I guess, I ruined it. It sparks my next question. What has sparked joy for you this week besides Crystal Bradford popping off?
Well, I guess we're going to keep it on the theme. Something that sparked joy for me this week was actually Kristi Tolliver. It has not been the smoothest start to her second tenure in Los Angeles. She opted out of last season, didn't play in the bubble. This second year, is not what she expected at all, right? Like, she was on a clubhouse, I think, during the off season where she basically said, like, yeah, this isn't the Sparks team I thought I was joining, but still on a 3-year max. So happy to have Kristi around. But like, what does Kristi Tolliver do? She shoots, right? And she's an excellent shooter, and that just has not been working for her so far this season on the Sparks. And it's a real bummer because if you've watched the Sparks or heard us talk about the Sparks, you know that one thing they can desperately use is more shooting. So she keeps saying, like, I am confident that the shots are going to start falling. I'm confident that the shots are going to start falling, like, pretty much every time she's talking to the media. And 32% from the season, it's safe to say that they haven't really fallen yet. But she did get just a great moment for the Sparks on Tuesday against the Dream. I'm not going to call this a good game because there were a lot of mistakes made in this game and some poor execution down the stretch that almost cost the Sparks the game, honestly. But she gets the chance to have the ball in her hands to tie the game heading into overtime. There's only 4.7 seconds left on the clock. She gets to her spot on the elbow, fades away, nails it. Staples Center goes nuts. It's just a great moment for Kristi Tolliver. The Sparks end up winning. And again, like, I don't think this is like a turning point victory for the Sparks by any means. Like, the fact that they beat the Dream on their home court does not mean that I think that they're playoff material. I hope that they are, selfishly, because I enjoy watching Sparks and I enjoy covering the Sparks and going against Staples Center. But just very cool for Kristi Tolliver, who surely expected to come back to Los Angeles to compete for another title and is in a markedly different situation this time around. But at least she got to have, you know, this awesome moment in front of the LA fans. And like, I have a very complicated relationship with Kristi Tolliver, and by that I mean I have complicated feelings towards her, and she has, you know, no understanding of that because we don't actually have a relationship. But Kristi Tolliver has made her, you know, bones as a clutch shooter, right? Like dating back to college when she was a freshman in the 2006 national championship game. She completes this 13-point comeback for Maryland in the national title game, hits a three over the 6'7" Allison Bales to send the game into overtime, which Maryland ends up beating Duke, which is why I have such a strong memory of this game. But Duke has not been back to the national title game since then, has not been to the Final Four since then. And Kristi Tolliver, meanwhile, just keeps hitting these shots. So I would say it sparked some joy and also just some painful recollections, as it always does when Kristi Tolliver does great things.
Yeah. Ooh. Long time. That's crazy to say because it's been 9 episodes. This is the 9th episode. Returning viewers of the Step Through know that my love for Kristi knows no bounds because I've been able to interact with her thanks to my job and like working with the Mystics and stuff. So I don't need to talk anymore about that. Can you talk to me a little about Nneka?
Yeah, so just how great is it to watch Nneka Ogwumike play basketball again? I mean, it's been 2 months. Like that's not even close to the length of an off season, but it felt like it had been forever. Her post footwork is just so freaking good. Like she, you know, has this up and unders. She can, you know, rotate to either shoulder. I mean, she's kind of a passing hub in this last game for the Sparks where, you know, she was operating a lot at the top of the key and like hitting cutters. And like there was a moment in the game where Nneka Ogwumike goes down, clutches her knee, and you think, oh crap, like this is it for Nneka. And then all she does is just come back to start the second half and not take a breather for the final 25 minutes of the game. And like you just see her embracing her role as the leader of this team, like, you know, getting into Brittany Seiss' face when, you know, there's defensive miscommunications, or just, you know, talking up Lauren Cox, you know, to prop her up because this is the first time she's really getting extended minutes in her WNBA career. So like Nneka just does everything, right? Like she scores, she rebounds, she makes it look super pretty. She's just a fighter. And oh my God, like the footwork. I cannot say enough about the footwork. It's perfect. Like she is not traditionally sized for a center. She often finds herself guarded by centers, and she just makes it work because she's super skilled and knows her way around the basket. I mean, I'll love watching Nneka. I mean, I would watch Space Jam again to watch more of Nneka.
Yeah, I mean, viewer, if you haven't been watching the Sparks, I mean,
we forgive you, you know.
Yeah, that's fine. But
I get it.
Find yourself some Nneka highlights, please, if you can. It will serve you better in the long term, somehow.
Yeah, totally. Anything that you wanted to hit on this week before we get to our game of the week, Evin?
No. The player I talked about being excited, what is happening to me? Got so excited, getting ready to transition from yeah. I just it all went out the window. The player I'm excited to see come back has not yet come back, but may do so. We'll talk about it at the end. But her team is our game of the week. The Aces played the Mystics in Las Vegas on the 15th, I believe.
I was going to say Sunday and Tuesday.
Yes.
I don't know the dates.
Oh, yes, the 15th then. Very confident now. The 15th, I know they played again on Tuesday, the 17th. Look at me, learning. But we did not take a look at that game because that game did not feature a 21-point comeback. So, Sabreena, if you're ready, dive into game of the week.
Yeah, the first thing that stood out to me from this Aces Mystics game, which I don't know if it's the most interesting thing or not, but Liz Cambage is very much on a like strict minutes schedule, right? And she, took off the Olympic break. She did not end up playing for Team Australia because of, her concern about going and playing in a bubble. And Liz doesn't like, her conditioning is always kind of a subjective question, I guess. Like she doesn't play like the same minutes as like minute patterns, I would say, as other superstars. So Bill Laimbeer's got her on like this very quick substitution pattern. And Mike Thibault decides to match Myisha Hines-Allen with the exact Liz minutes pattern because he doesn't trust, presumably, Teresa Plaisance to guard Liz Cambage, which, I mean, yeah, I'm with you, Mike Thibault. I wouldn't trust that matchup either. What's interesting is that Tina Charles doesn't really get a chance in this matchup. Though, to be fair, the Aces also have a dynamic frontcourt player, Naisha Wilson, who Tina Charles has to guard. So, yeah, maybe we should spare Tina Charles from having to just toggle back and forth between Liz and Naisha. So, Myisha Hines-Allen gets to, be on the floor whenever Liz is, but that means that she's also coming off whenever Liz is coming off, and Liz gets in foul trouble in the first half. So it's a super weird situation where Myisha Hines-Allen is barely playing because Liz is barely playing in the first half. And if you watch the Mystics last season, you know that Myisha Hines-Allen can play like 38 minutes in a game. Like it's not a problem for her. But the Mystics get in this weird situation where they end up building a big lead, but like they have hardly used Myisha in the first half because of this commitment to keep her on the floor with us. And I just thought it was so funny because then Mike Thibault like overcorrects in the second half and just plays her the whole third quarter without Liz being on the floor, which ends up leading to a bad situation at the start of the fourth because he finally gets her a rest, and then Liz just eats against Plaisance for the first 3 minutes of the quarter. And that's kind of where the game was won, where Liz gets the Aces into the bonus, just posts up Teresa Plaisance over and over again. And the Mystics are screwed by the end because now they keep sending the Aces to the line and the Liz is in a rhythm. And I found it a really interesting decision that like this perfectly reasonable plan of matching up minutes with your best center defender sort of backfired for Washington because of how the game ended up playing out.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering about that. I didn't do any prep for that game. I just sort of jumped in because it was the one game I couldn't watch that day. I was studying WNBA games all throughout, but because I live in DC, I didn't get to access it on League Pass. So I didn't know anything about that game. When we decided it was our game of the week, I decided to just jump in cold. And I was wondering about that. It was weird. It was very weird. Just because, obviously Liz being in foul trouble was the reason she didn't play very much in the first half. But the minutes limit I did kind of have in the back of my mind. But mirroring minutes is, there are definitely cons to it. And coaches out there learn from this, I guess, because Myisha Hines-Allen, if you watched her in the bubble, she, like you said, she can definitely go and she can carry a high workload. It's just giving her the first half off pretty much didn't do them any favors. And yeah, so when you get tired, you get tired. It's not as if, oh, you took 20 minutes off, you shouldn't get tired. That's right. Not always the case.
It's like when, coaches like unintentionally foul out their own players, right? Like they get 2 fouls and they sit them for the rest of the half. And then it's like, well, now they're not in a rhythm at all. And you still can't play them like 16 minutes straight, unless you're Nneka Ogwumike, apparently. But it's the minutes management. I don't envy coaches having to go through this. I just thought it was very interesting that, there was a clear plan that the Mystics went into the game with. And for a while it worked and then it failed spectacularly.
Yep. Well, that's what you want. If you want it to fail, you have to fail big. You don't want minor. Speaking of not failing big, but just another funny. Well, it was a fun moment to me. Is about 6 minutes left in the first quarter, where I think it was Ariel Atkins is trying to fight through a Liz screen, and she ends up knocking her over, or I don't know who it was that knocked whom over. but Liz was eventually called for the offensive foul. But so Ariel Atkins like extends her arm down. Liz is on the ground and she, goes to pick her up, and that's not going to go well.
No.
For Ariel Atkins. So
I know
Maisha
exactly
Hines
what
Allen.
you're talking about.
Right. Maisha Hines Allen like also reaches down, but neither of them are like in proper position. They're just hinging or they're loading from their back, I guess. And so both of them have to pause, reset, get in proper squat position to be able to pick Liz up. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I love that this is the most extensive biomechanics discussion we've ever gotten into on this podcast, is how to successfully pick up Liz Cambage off the floor. I mean, to be fair, Liz was like having a great time out of all of it. Like she was cracking up as this was happening. So if she can get a laugh out of it, so can the rest of us.
I think the part I enjoyed the most out of it was at the end when she got scraped up off the ground by these two Mystics players. She looks at the big board, but she looks at it and she goes, "On me?" Like, because they called the offensive foul on her. It's great stuff.
This is going to be my my usual plea to Bill Laimbeer to play his best players more. Why is Kiah Stokes the first sub off the bench? I get she's coming in for Liz Cambage. You know who can also play the 4 or the 5? The 2-time reigning 6th woman of the year, Tierra Hamby. Maybe consider that instead of playing more Kiah Stokes minutes. I don't know. I just have this in my notes. Literally, Kiah Stokes is the sub ahead of Hamby. Why is this happening? But hey, it's working. I gotta say, like, if I were an Aces player, I would get so annoyed watching Bill on the bench, because he just like looks so put off that he has to be there most of the time. And I know that's not what he's feeling. Like, he's excellent coach. The Aces run great stuff. Like, I'm not, demeaning the quality of his coaching at all. The look of it is just hilarious to me every time I watch an Aces game.
Yeah, that's exactly. I've always wondered how it is when you're trying to explain to other people. So my partner was like watching it and she was just like, "Who is that guy they keep cutting to?" And he's sitting next to fans because he is the head coach, right? But he looks inconvenienced to be there.
Yeah. and the best dressed guy in the building too, because he's wearing a suit now.
Yes. He's just that scowl, he's so memeable.
Yeah, so memeable. Very much so. Yeah. A fun thing about this game, other than obviously watching Bill Laimbeer's reactions, was just how many former Olympic teammates were going after one another, right? Like they did like a nice gold medal presentation before the game, and you've got 6 gold medalists on these two teams between the 5-on-5 and the 3-on-3. And so there's so many situations where Ariel Atkins is guarding Chelsea Gray, and it's like, I wonder how many times I had to do this over the past month in practice. And so many situations where Tina Charles is guarding A'ja Wilson. And again, like, Tina was Asia's direct sub at the Olympics at the 4. And then, for my personal purposes, so many situations where Sydney Wiese is guarding Chelsea Gray or Riquna Williams. And I'm sure that has happened a lot for them in the past 2 years. There was one play in the first quarter where Sydney gets the ball and it's on a switch, and she attacks A'ja Wilson from the wing. And like she drives, she kind of has to fade back, and then she lifts up this like really awkward bank shot, but it goes in. And like, I tell you, Evin, when I was watching this and Sydney Wiese makes that shot on A'ja, I was just like, this is the best play I've ever seen Sydney Wiese make.
I also have that in my notes, actually. It's so I wrote it down. I was like, best highlight of the game, ? And I made it through the end of the third quarter and I removed the question mark because I was just like, no, it's not going to get better than this. This is Sydney Wiese with a little shake on A'ja. So
on A'ja, yeah. Through the first quarter, A'ja was having one of those cardio games, Like A'ja Wilson has very famously tweeted after a game before that, like, man, I was really just out there getting cardio, like didn't actually contribute. That's how I felt watching A'ja in the first quarter. The Aces just are loaded, right? Like, you get the ball in Plum, Gray, Campage's hands, like you feel good about the outcome of a possession, or even Jackie Young and Riquna Williams, because Riquna was on one of her heaters to start this one. Like, it's not like you're running bad offense if it's not going through A'ja, but at the same time, it's fascinating to me that she can go that long in a game without really affecting the outcome, because she's too good for you to ignore her that long, right? And I kept like looking back at my notes and thinking like, did I miss something? Like, did Asia do something that I just forgot? And it's like, no, like her first couple shots actually came off of these ridiculous Chelsea Gray passes. Chelsea is just so ambitious sometimes with what she tries to do with the ball. Like Asia like sets her a screen on the wing and then like flares out for a jumper, and Chelsea just sort of like flips it over her head, and that's the first shot that Asia makes out of this just like stupid pass. And then her second basket doesn't come until like a minute left in the half, where Chelsea again just throws a no look into traffic underneath the basket, and Asia just sort of comes up with it and hits a jumper. And apparently that's what it takes to get Asia Wilson going, is Chelsea Gray throwing her unreasonably difficult passes.
Yeah. So actually, the very first one that came to mind is 3 minutes into the game, where Chelsea has the ball in the corner and Asia looks like she's fighting to go set her screen. So Tina Charles and Ariel Atkins, so that's 4 Olympians right there, they swarm her because the sideline is right there. And so she does this thing where I had to slow it down. So she has it, and Asia is like popping into space. So she's going to the slot, and it looks like it's so hard to see because of the angle. But I think what she does is she fakes a behind the back pass so she can throw a wraparound around Tina Charles the other way. And I cannot explain to you how the ball got there, as often is the case with, Chelsea Gray passes. Mm-hmm. I mean, Asia missed, but I was just like, I have it in my notes as Chelsea, how? Double question mark. So.
And unlike the other one, the question marks remain because it's still unexplainable how Chelsea just does this. Tosh had a really nice entry pass to Tina Charles later in the game that sort of curved around the baseline, and I was very impressed by that too. Really great game from Natasha Cloud. The one thing that I loved about her game is, so she was matched up against Jackie Young a lot, and Jackie Young is strong. It is very hard to muscle Jackie Young. And Natasha Cloud just sets up shop in the post against her multiple times. And I'm just looking like, I know Natasha Cloud is strong, but she's smaller than Jackie. Like Jackie Young, like this is her region of the court. And it was very successful for her. Multiple post-up attempts against against Jackie Young. And like, maybe I'm just misremembering what Natasha Cloud is good at. I think of her more as a perimeter shooter and operator, but did not realize she had that little wrinkle in her game, and to do it against Jackie Young was very impressive.
So I actually, this might be a problem. Our notes are aligning. It's I have this play 2 minutes into the game is like nobody else touches the ball. There is like no real offense. Tina Charles just sets a screen and she doesn't even connect. So it's not like Jackie is dislodged. But no, Tosh just like goes down into the post, and then this one is less of like a bully ball play, but like she hits like a shoulder shimmy and then a turnaround fadeaway. It's just like people don't do that to Jackie Young.
No, they don't, unless it's like a mismatch and a big is on her.
Yes, but even then. Yeah, especially because like we had just seen her in the 3-on-3 where, and people have talked about this enough, but like, no, they did not call very many fouls in 3-on-3. You could mug somebody and it'd still be a legal play, but nobody did that to Jackie in 3-on-3 really that I can remember. So the fact that Natasha Cloud, who shameless plug for a video I made for Natasha, you won't find very many post-ups in that video, and I tried to include as many different types of scores and takes in that video, but yeah, shout out to Natasha Cloud for bullying Jackie Young.
Yeah, I was stunned. Like she did it, like you said, pretty much a minute into the game, and then does it again multiple times. And I was like, how is this a matchup that you guys have decided is the way to attack Vegas? But you'd think it'd be more of like the ball movement and like getting the aces in rotation, because the aces, well, I use that term lightly because the aces were not rotating in the first half. They were basically just sticking to their man and then just praying for a missed shot when someone happened to be open. Like there were multiple situations when they would set a high ball screen, the Mystics would, and two defenders would collapse on the ball, and the screener or the popper was just wide open. Like, Plaisance had multiple possessions like this. I know it was driving the Aces broadcast absolutely nuts, just watching these repeated breakdowns over and over again. And like, there's one situation where Teresa Plaisance is on the right wing, and Chelsea Gray is guarding in the corner, and just sort of looks at Plaisance, is like, nah, not gonna rotate over. But yeah, the Aces are too good to be defending like that. This was very much oh yeah, we're playing a game that counts again, first half, and then immediately turn it on in the second half.
Right. I think they actually at halftime they actually did the thing where they illustrate that of like, here's Chelsea and here's her staring at Plaisance instead of rotating over. And I thought it was a little harsh from the home broadcast, but
yeah,
it is what it is. And I mean, Chelsea Gray makes people pay.
Yeah. She figured it out at the end of the second half. It was fine. Just, it was so funny listening to the broadcast talk about that.
Yeah, they were really fed up.
They were so upset about it. You got to see some of what the Aces are better at on defense in the second half. Like, they really shut them down in the fourth quarter, especially. The one play that made me realize, though, that the Aces had finally woken up was actually at the start of the third quarter, where Ariel Atkins like picks off this pocket pass and is running the court in transition, and Asia just stays with her the whole time and like contests that shot and the offensive rebound shot, so they don't end up scoring on the play, even though it's an odd man advantage for the Mystics. And I was like, okay, well, at least somebody got the message that they actually have to play defense.
Right.
It's not just a pointing kind of thing. Like, isn't that supposed to be your man? No, like, we'll actually take the responsibility of defending this one.
Yes, and that's another thing too that I think was it definitely stands out when it happens, is when the reigning MVP wants to be a part of the game, wants to affect the game, there is no stopping her, and you can feel it. There's that force to it. You can hear her talking, which, if you're someone like me, listen to enough of their podcast at this point, then you know exactly what she sounds like. She's hyping herself up. She's saying, and it just feels like when she wants to be, when she's not settling for jump shots, or if she settles for a jump shot, she makes a move first and then gets into her jump shot. It just feels like when she starts doing that, she's unstoppable. And we've talked before about how she manages to operate in no space at all. She's getting more and more space, because I think one of the bigger turning points in this game was when the Aces decided to downsize and have that Asia Hamby front court, and Myisha Hines-Allen is playing spot minutes, sort of, or not necessarily spot minutes, but she's not in there, and they can just attack in every kind of way. And we've talked about this a lot, and I'm sorry for all the new viewers. Hi. For all the new viewers, we have talked about the Aces a lot, because the Aces are very good, but the offense looks very different when it's Asia and Liz versus when it's Hamby in there instead of one of the two. So that was dynamite, I think.
It's why it frustrates me to no end that Kia Stokes is the first stop off the bench. But there were so many times when I was rewatching this game, and like, it's what, 67-46 with 2 minutes left in the third quarter, and I'm thinking, okay, so it's a 21-point game. There are 12 minutes left. Usually, if like you're at the point where the deficit is doubling up the amount of time left, like, I mean, not exactly, but there's probably not enough time left for the Aces to make a run. And they were back in this game within 3 minutes. Like, it was so fast. They go on a 7-0 run to end the quarter. It ends up turning into a 13-0 run. And even when they're down 6, you're thinking, okay, how is Washington going to blow this? How is Washington going to blow this? It's not even a question of, oh, like, the Mystics could still figure this out. Like, admittedly, like, when you're rewatching, obviously, you know what's going to happen. Like, even watching it live, it was just, oh, how is Washington going to blow this? And they went up by 8 with 2.5 minutes left. And still, it was just the Aces had felt so comfortable at that point. Like, I didn't even realize that they led at the beginning of the game 2-0. And then they led at the end of the game 84-83, and never in between. But you never felt like they were out of it, just because of the amount of talent they have on their team. And like that started with Liz K. Beige in the fourth quarter. We alluded to this earlier, but like I mentioned Nneka Ogwumike's post footwork before. Liz's is not as she doesn't have to work as hard because she has some more size advantages, but she was just, you know, getting really deep post positioning. Plaisance was like not a physical presence for her. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It was like there was no defender there. It was like it was just some, you know, practice dummy with like the big sticks for hands who was trying to mimic some height. Like there was no resistance for Liz, who was trying to set up shop, and they just kept lofting her the ball over and over again. Easy 2 points. You get the aces in foul trouble. You get the Mystics in foul trouble. And then now you're just a parade of free throws, which Jackie Young takes advantage of because she is always attacking the basket. A'ja Wilson can take advantage of because it is so hard to guard her jump shot, right? The number of times they just slapped A'ja Wilson's elbow as she was elevating for a jump shot had to drive that Mystics coaching staff nuts, because again, got to be the number one thing on the scouting report when you're talking about A'ja Wilson. And it just kept happening. So that sequence to me where they like Liz finishes over Plaisance, then she finishes against over Tina Charles on the next play. And like within a minute and 40 seconds, it's a 6-point game. And like, what are we supposed to do here? Like, we're done. I'm sorry, Washington. Thanks for coming to play. Let's wrap it up and try again on Tuesday.
Yeah. Some rough stuff. Liz is just a bully. Sometimes. And I mean, the thing too is that when you talked about this might be a byproduct of the rewatch, but at no point did I ever feel like the Aces were like completely out of the game. Even when the score was, I actually thought, and again, like I watched it cold. When I went into it, I thought, oh, they start their comeback in the third. And no, they were up. The Mystics were still up by 21 in the third, but at no point did I ever feel like, oh, okay, this game is too bad. That sucks for the Aces. This is their first game back, you know. I'm sure the Mystics had much more time as a full roster, not full, but as a roster getting to work in all of that stuff, but they didn't. It felt as if the Aces shook off the rust in those 3 quarters, and then that was it. And then they figured out that this was, like you said, real basketball. There's no Commissioner's Cup anymore. There's nothing like that. This is all that matters, getting that first round bye. And then they turned it on. And again, I didn't watch the second game, but I can't imagine that was all that different.
Yeah, what's unfair about the Aces is like, you know, we talked about how the Mystics had more of their roster together during the break and had a chance, you know, to sort of have a second training camp of sorts, even if it was about Atkins and Tina Charles. The Aces, like, they have 7 players who could charitably be, or 7, maybe even 8 players who could be in any other team's closing lineup. So they're just mixing and matching down the stretch. And like fatigue is not an issue. There are multiple possessions, offensive possessions, where Chelsea Gray is not on the court for Las Vegas, which is astounding to think about when you think about like what Chelsea Gray has become synonymous with, is hitting those big shots. And yet, again, several times where they're just like, oh, we don't need Chelsea right now because, again, coming off of a gold medal, maybe not in the best shape to play right now. No big deal. We'll just put in Kelsey, Plum, and Riquna Williams in the backcourt and we're going to be fine. Or we'll put in Jackie Young in the backcourt, we're going to be fine. And like, if Liz isn't ready to go, there's De'Erica. Like, A'ja is playing all these minutes, obviously, because, you know, A'ja has to be playing all these minutes.
Oh, yeah.
The durability is what A'ja Wilson, you know, is one of the things that she's best at. But I was stunned because like, I'm sort of like, you know, checking out the clock and there's Chelsea Gray hits her first jumper of the fourth quarter. Like A'ja sets a screen to just free her in the paint, just like get her like an inch of separation against Atkins. And Chelsea hits this jumper. And I'm like, okay, this is Chelsea Gray time, right? Like this is when she's going to start to take over. And then she comes out of the game and I was like, wait, what? But again, it's just unfair that Vegas can do that and still be successful. Washington doesn't have that opportunity. Like they were mentioning that they've played 40% of their games this season with 8 or fewer players. They played that one game with 6 players.
Oh yeah.
Like we talked about this earlier with Seattle, their players were getting gassed and Vegas is just, you know, rounding into form the longer this game goes on. And they almost had them, right? Like Vegas doesn't take their first lead until 4.6 seconds left in the game. Like their first lead of the second half, I should say. So they were just so close to holding them off. So very close. But I mean, that's why this is a championship favorite, because it doesn't, I mean, it matters obviously when your stars are not at their best, but like they have so many options in case something is going wrong.
Yes. And we talked about this, you know, in the context of the Storm game, all of the Storm games actually, where it's you sort of trust Seattle's stars, I guess, more. They're three or they're four, as you pointed out for Mercedes Russell, but like you're saying 7 players, maybe 8 that could close, and that's depending on like if, you know, Riquna Williams is feeling it. I think the thing that actually kept them in the game was the Riquna Williams, Kelsey Plum. Their buckets felt timely and kept them in the game. And I think were it not for the first half that Kelsey Plum had, this game would be unreachable. And, you know, I talked about how it felt like the Aces were never out of it. But, you know, going back and watching it, if you're looking at the score, if Kelsey isn't hitting these tough shots, these like very well contested threes, then I think that might be just a little bit of separation that the Mystics could have used. Not that 21 points was enough separation apparently, but, you know, I think it's that. And Jackie Young too. We've talked about Jackie a lot, but number 1 overall pick, but now she's an Olympic gold medalist. You have to imagine that she's somebody who was never lacking in confidence, but like now you add that on top of it. It's just the Aces are so much trouble.
Yeah.
Any
really
way you
are.
slice it.
I know that we should spend, you know, a good amount of time on the other 10 teams. Like I find myself so often whenever I'm watching the Aces, like, how would this work against, you know, Breanna Stewart and Mercedes Russell if they were guarding it? Like, and I'm hoping, knock on wood, we'll get that series and there'll be time for that. So for now, I'm just going to focus on the Mystics because, God, the poor Mystics who, you know, played it so well and then at the end just get screwed over by this Chelsea Gray, A'ja Wilson pick and roll. Like, no matter how you try to guard it, it just doesn't work, right? Like, so they send 2 defenders at Chelsea when it looks like Asia's going to set a screen, and then A'ja kind of just fakes it and slips to the basket, and she's wide open, and that's a bucket. Or, you know, there was a great like Natasha Cloud actually take on Diarca Hamby in between this when it looked like the Mystics might actually go up by 4, but then Natasha misses the free throw, and then obviously that comes back to bite them. But you know, then Chelsea Gray and A'ja run another pick and roll. They sort of collapse on Chelsea. Myisha Hines-Allen is pointing to A'ja on the elbow, the opposite elbow. Natasha Cloud comes, but like, with all due respect to Natasha Cloud, what contest is she going to provide on an A'ja Wilson jumper from the elbow? Like, I love her, but like she elevates so well on her jumper. She's so much taller than Natasha. It's basically an open shot for her. Then Myisha Hines-Allen gets called for that travel, which there were a couple plays that called travels. Like Chelsea Gray got called for one, and Myisha Hines-Allen gets called for one at the end of the game, where it looked like they were just jump stops, but like their feet were just so bouncy that like I could see what the ref was calling. But the Mystics were very upset about it, as they should be. But like, then, you know, just final play of the game, another Chelsea Gray, A'ja Wilson pick and roll. This time Chelsea just keeps the ball. And I mean, if you're going to give Chelsea Gray a mid-range jumper with a chance to win the game, the Aces are going to feel very good about that every single time.
And nobody wants it more than, genuinely, it feels like nobody wants it more.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, there's so much to. Yeah, okay. I'm following your lead. I'm not going to talk about like, oh, what could happen if they were talking about this game. Yeah. On the other side of it, the Mystics, I haven't had a chance to talk about the Mystics yet, so I'll do a sort of like video breakdown of their plays shortly, but when we get to that. So if that's what you're looking for, that'll be up ahead.
I think this is a good time for it. I mean,
oh, okay.
You know,
I thought,
yeah, let's go for it. We kind of know what Vegas does, right? Like they just, they run a lot of good stuff, but then at the end of the game, like you just put the ball in the hands of your best players. And like, I didn't think that Chelsea Gray was that big of a talent upgrade over Kayla McBride, but the fit is perfect. It's just perfect because Kayla McBride is not a pick and roll ball handler. That's just not what she does. So you put that next to A'ja Wilson and Liz Cambage, and voila, like, just gold every single time down the court.
Before I get into it, I did want to talk about a few aces plays just because this is something that worked for them. In the second quarter, Chelsea Gray is bringing the ball down on the right side. She enters the ball to Dearica Hamby, and then her and Kelsey Plum split. And then what happens is that Leilani Mitchell takes a bad angle, and Kelsey is able to pop into space, and so she ends up with a 3. And then the next offensive possession, Chelsea and Kelsey, or as Bill refers to them, Chelsea and Plum, right? Because that's easier. It's smarter. She's bringing it down on the left side. And so this time the ball is entered and she goes to set a screen. Leilani has learned, so she stays connected. And so Kelsey not pushes off, but she creates separation so she can curl around. And now Leilani Mitchell is stuck on the wrong side of Chelsea Gray, and that you're never going to be able to get back around when that happens. So the ball is thrown over top. Chelsea is able to seal and finishes. And like now that I've finished talking, I'm 90% sure I flubbed Kelsey somewhere in there, even though I corrected myself with the Plum thing.
You should just go with Plum and Gray.
That's true. It's so much better. Yeah. And so it's just, and like this play near the end of the first half, it's Asia this time. She gets the ball entered to her at the elbow, and Chelsea sets a screen for Jackie Young. Thank God. Or the other way around. Jackie sets a screen for Chelsea, and then she gets a dribble handoff, and Jackie is actually behind the 3-point line, but she like stares at it and then takes a step in and pulls up, which is, more difficult because it's now much more contested. But hey, she's a gold medalist for a reason. She hits it. So there's that.
She doesn't like her threes. She likes the mid-range jumper.
She is the type of player Bill Laimbeer wants. Will turn down open threes so she can take tough contested 2s. Okay. All right. So let's jump into the Mystic stuff. If you haven't been watching the Mystics, they're so much fun because Mike Tebow, I think Matt Ellentuck tweeted something along these lines. Again, the shoutouts are getting like, okay. So Matt basically said something along the lines of like, he can MacGyver, you can take 2 players and like,
you, me, and Matt.
Yeah. And he can make a very functional offense out of that. And when you have somebody like Tina Charles or Maisha Hines-Allen or like Natasha Cloud, like you can really do some damage. So the first play we're going to look at is a 77 stagger veer circle. You don't have to know what any of these things mean. I'll explain it as it's happening. So double drag by Maisha Hines-Allen and Tina Charles. And then that turns into a double stagger for Shatori, which turns into another double stagger for Ariel Atkins. Doesn't work out here, but you can sort of see how Tina Charles gets the ball in the corner and then she is able to attack. And that's really potent stuff, especially if you have another player who like is a former MVP who's coming back to play. And then the next thing, this one is called Horns Rub. So what it basically is Tasha will enter the ball to Maisha and then set a rub screen for Tina. And you don't have to know what a rub screen is. You just have to be watching this. And so Jackie obviously has to jam up Tina because as it happens, Tina Charles is a really good scorer. That frees Natasha Cloud to spring back out for an open 3. This one, a variation of this play, Horns Rub, but it flows into a dribble handoff for Tasha. And so you can either call this a veer or a flare. So I say or because either Plaisance is screening for Ariel and they improvise the flare, or the flare was pre-planned and therefore it's not a veer. So one or the other. Regardless, the ball is swung to Shatori and Tina sets an angled step-up screen because she knows how they're going to defend this sideline ball screen so she can pop out. And then if you've watched this enough or look at my threads, the one thing I like to point out the most is Horns Flex. So here, Leilani Mitchell brings the ball down. She hits ahead to Plaisance, who flips it back. That's where the flip comes from. She waits until everybody gets into position and then runs Horns Flex. So Leilani is going to come down and set a flex screen for Maisha Hines-Allen, who gets great post position and is able to score a tough take on Dearica Hamby. And then, basically the same play, But this time, Hamby and Plum work to take away the flex screen. So Maisha has to use the down screen that was set and is able to spring open for 3. Okay. So this time, at the end of the first, it's another horn set. It could be anything because that is the nature of horns. Shout out to Vicky Johnson and the Dallas Wings because horns. So Leilani Mitchell is going to spin, and it seems like a pointless spin move. But having had somewhat of a background in like Princeton and stuff, a pointless spin move is a trigger for action. So here you see Plaisance, either she goes to the ball screen, or you can just call it a straight flare, but there's no flare screen. And then that triggers a dive by Erica McCall. And, nothing comes of it because Asia is able to switch out onto Leilani Mitchell and stop her. So she forces her to pass the ball to Sydney Wiese, who attacks out of the corner, draws 2, and is able to drop it off to Erica McCall, who scores. So for this one, it's going to look like a horn set, but everybody knows at this point what Iverson action is. So Natasha Cloud is motioning line or loop or something like that. But so Ariel is going to cut across that Iverson action. And then when she gets to the elbow, she's going to loop around the second screener. As she loops around the second screener and she gets to the post, it's Ricky action, which is just annoying coaches speak for a ReScreen. So that's all that is. And Ariel is able to pop out, and then she gets what looks like a side ball screen, and then nothing goes through. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is because if you're watching the Mystics, an automatic in this offense is that if the ball is reversed to the top and there are players in the wing in the corner, as soon as the ball gets to the top, if she pass fakes or dribbles at, which Tina Charles does here, then the person on the wing cuts to the basket and through, which clears that side. And so Sydney Wiese is able to attack, and then Tasha Cloud gets it in the corner and swings it. Turns into an air ball here, but still a great play.
Why is a ReScreen called a Ricky?
It starts with R, and coaches are annoying. Coaches are.
I always wonder if they're like named after players, and I was like trying.
Sometimes they are
Barry or something, but
no, it's just actually maybe
it starts with an R.
Yeah, that general. It's infuriating. And then so for this one, the Mystics run pistol, which you can look it up. It's very easy. I'll throw a link down to my good friend Bowser to Bowser Basketball Action Dictionary. Pistol action, and then Ariel is going to flare, and then Leilani is going to swing the ball, and then it's going to be chase action, which chase is normally where a big passes to a guard, and that big sets a ball screen to where they just pass the ball. So Plaisance chase action for Ariel here. Yeah. So there's that.
I feel like we didn't do a good enough job talking about Ariel Atkins just hitting a lot of tough shots in this game. Really good at her shot selection was a bit ambitious sometimes, but she had a lot of tough shots.
Yeah, it really makes me want to see. I don't know if they played horse, because I found out from the many different things that the Olympians did after, or even just the podcast, is that all they could do was go from the hotel to the gym to practice, or to where they were playing games. And it makes me wonder, you have the likes of like obviously Breanna Stewart, but Jewell Loyd, Ariel Atkins, like Asia Wilson, like who is the tougher?
Diana Taurasi.
Well, I wasn't gonna mention her because she's gonna, she's not gonna mess around. She's gonna slit people's throats before she takes anybody's crap. But like tough shot makers, long twos, tough twos, and Diana would win. Yeah, but I'm not including her because like you have to save her legs for something.
Right. Working on that hip too. Yeah.
But yeah, so if you're a fan of the Mystics or aspire to be a fan of the Mystics, they run some really fun stuff.
Yeah. Maybe Tina Charles would be good at that tough shot making too, because she had to take a lot of very tough contested shots before coming to the Mystics. Speaking of tough shot making, actually, Candice Dupree, we talked about her and how she was just a terrible fit in Seattle at the start of the season. Makes a lot more sense in Atlanta. Still a defensive tire fire, which is to be expected for older veteran scoring forwards. I'm thinking of Carmelo Anthony right now, but her game just makes a lot more sense in Atlanta. Like they need players to just step into open shots, and she was able to do that like a lot for the Dream in the last 2 games. So a little unrelated, but I'm happy to see Candice Dupree finding a spot that is more useful for what she's able to do at this point in her career.
I mean, also too, she steps into this Atlanta situation, if we can, because I'd rather be nice, and is able to get rotation minutes right away. And that happens when you're one of the all-time leading scorers, so it works.
I wonder if Monique Billings shouldn't just be starting in her place, honestly, because she is like a defender, which is nice. When you have historically the worst defense in WNBA history, maybe you want to throw in Monique Billings there. I don't know, but they had an opening with Cheyenne Parker on maternity leave, so it's a good fit. There's no one's gonna like be upset with her if she steps into a long 2, because that is allowed within the Dream offense in a way that it is just not in the Seattle Storm offense.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, Candice, she's serviceable as a defender in certain situations. Cause I started talking and like I
Are you gonna get called out again for being too positive about Candice?
Yeah, I felt Em tweeting at me is what goodness. So yeah. Candice Dupree, Tina Charles, great fits in their new situations. And unless you have anything else about this game, we can talk about what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, I guess for you, Evin, it's the same thing as last week, right?
It is the same thing as last week. And, reckless speculation, the Mystics game got moved up to ESPN proper, right? So a Breanna Stewart, Elena Delle Donne game. Obviously, Elena would be on a minutes restriction. I mean, fingers crossed that she's not, but that would be so much fun.
I would think she's on a minutes restriction.
Yeah, because I mean, I was actually there in person when they played they didn't play in Washington because, the Mystics organization.
It's like George Mason or something.
Yes, it was 30 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. from their usual place. And, that's where they swept them. But like Breanna Stewart and Elena Delle Donne, just to get to watch the two of them is... Who isn't looking forward to that, honestly?
Yeah. I mean, I remember how excited I was for the 2019 season after their finals because Elena wasn't quite healthy during the 2018 finals. But I mean, it almost seems like Breanna versus Asia has usurped that as like the premier rivalry. We barely even got a chance, to celebrate Breanna versus Elena Delle Donne before it was just immediately taken away from us. So it would be cool if they got like some meaningful games against one another, maybe like a semifinal series or something. I don't know what the Mystics prospects are in the playoffs. And I mean, at this point, I think it's a little preposterous to think that they could edge out Minnesota or Connecticut or Chicago for one of those semifinal spots. But hey, you never know what's going to happen. But yeah, that's a really good one to look forward to. Breanna versus Elena Delle Donne. Minnesota lost to Connecticut the other day. It's their very first loss since they, went on this big old run. They're about to start playing some real life opposition again. And I am interested to see what this Lynx team looks like faced with some adversity once again, because it had been very smooth sailing for a while. I'm curious if they were just fattening up on an easy part of the schedule or if this is actually as good of a Lynx team as we thought they could be.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to Notre Dame. Three players there. And so that's 5 now. That's an official 5.
Achonwa McBride.
Just Shepherd.
Oh, okay, great. So we are recording this on Thursday, which means Minnesota has yet to play Connecticut for their second game, but they will have played by the time you listen to this probably. So we'll see if Connecticut continues to just exercise their dominance over the rest of the league other than Seattle, or if this is a bounce back game for the Lynx.
Looking forward to it. Maryland players, lots and lots of Maryland players.
Ugh, Maryland players. Maryland is like a Connecticut Sun factory farm.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, unless you have any more Maryland hate you didn't spew hate, but like, some
I think
Indiana
it was just like
Fever-esque.
emanating like from my being, without me even trying to do it.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's it for us. Excited to have regular season games back. Like, I really enjoyed prepping for the Commissioner's Cup final, but to have more teams to pick from and watch and, getting to thread games again, it's super fun. So I'm excited that the W is back in full swing, and, we have a month or thereabouts until the playoffs. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be nuts. Like the standings are so close and everybody has so much to play for, whether it's, that 2-3 fighting to avoid the single elimination or the 4-5 fighting to avoid like 2 single eliminations.
Right.
I mean, and there's even like a real playoff chase. Like you could say that there are at least 9 teams who are vying for the 8, maybe 10, depending on how you view those bottom 3. But yeah, a lot could still change, and it's gonna be good. I'm very excited.
Yep. So, I mean, that's it for us. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye.